Dear Kitty, we have had a book from the library with the challenging title of What Do You Think of the Modern Young Girl? I want to talk about this subject today. The author of this book criticizes the youth of today from top to toe without, however, condemning the whole of the young brigade as incapable of anything good. On the contrary, she is rather of the opinion that if young people wish, they have it in their hands to make a bigger, more beautiful, and better world, but that they occupy themselves with superficial things without giving a thought to real beauty. In some passages, the writer gave me very much the feeling she was directing her criticisms at me, and that's why I want to lay myself completely bare to you for once and defend myself against this attack. This is July 15th, Saturday, 1944. I have one outstanding trait in my character which must strike anyone who knows me for any length of time, and that is my knowledge of myself. I can watch myself and my actions just like an outsider, the Anne of every day. I can face entirely without prejudice, because without making excuses for her, and watch what's good and what's bad about her. This self-consciousness haunts me. And every time I open my mouth, I know as soon as I've spoken whether that ought to have been different or that was right as it was. There are so many things about myself that I condemn. I couldn't begin to name them all. I understand more and more how true Daddy's words were when he said all children must look after their own upbringing. Parents can only give good advice or put them on the right paths, but the final forming of a person's character lies in their own hands. In addition to this, I have lots of courage. I always feel so strong, and as if I can bear a great deal. I feel so free and so young. I was glad when I first realized it, because I don't think I shall easily bow down before the blows that inevitably come to everyone, but I've talked about these things so often before. Now I want to come to the chapter of Daddy and Mummy don't understand me. Daddy and Mummy have always thoroughly spoiled me, were sweet to me, defended me, and have done all that parents could do. And yet I felt so terribly lonely for a long time, so left out and neglected and misunderstood. Daddy tried all he could to check my rebellious spirit, but it was of no use. I have cured myself by seeing for myself what was wrong in my behavior and keeping it before my eyes. How is it that Daddy was never any support to me in my struggle? Why did he completely miss the mark when he wanted to offer me a helping hand? Daddy tried the wrong methods. He always talked to me as a child who was going through difficult phases. It sounds crazy, because Daddy's the only one who has always taken me into his confidence, and no one but Daddy has given me the feeling that I'm sensible. But there's one thing he's omitted, you see. He hasn't realized that for me, the fight to get on top was more important than all else. I didn't want to hear about symptoms of your age or other girls, or it wears off by itself. I didn't want to be treated as a girl like all others, but as a Anne on her own merits. Pim didn't understand that. For that matter, I can't confide in anyone unless they tell me a lot about themselves, and as I know very little about Pim, I don't feel that I can tread upon more intimate ground with him. Pim always takes up the older fatherly attitude. Tells me that he too has had similar passing tendencies. But still, he's not able to feel with me like a friend, however hard he tries. Before, she was criticizing her mother, saying her mother is like a friend to her instead of a mother. And now she's saying that he's a father to her, but not a friend. It's like, make up your damn mind. Or maybe she wants a balance. You're somewhat of a friend, somewhat of a... your authority figure till what? Frickin' 8? And then you can only hope to be a friend after that, so... These things have made me never mention my views on life, nor my well-considered theories to anyone but my diary, and occasionally to Margot. To Margot, I concealed from Daddy everything that perturbed me. I never shared my ideals with him. I was aware of the fact that I was pushing him away from me. I couldn't do anything else. I've acted entirely according to my feelings, but I've acted in the way that was best for my peace of mind because I should completely lose my repose and self-confidence which I have built up so shakily if at this stage I were to accept criticisms of my half-completed task, and I can't do that even from Pim, although it sounds very hard, for not only have I not shared my secret thoughts with Pim, but I have often pushed him even further from me by my irritability. This is a point that I think a lot about. Why is it that Pim annoys me? So much so that I can hardly bear him teaching me, that his affectionate ways strike me as being put on, that I want to be left in peace and would really prefer it if he dropped me a bit until I felt more certain in my attitude towards him. Because I still have a gnawing feeling of guilt over that horrible letter that I dared write him when I was so wound up. Oh, how hard it is to be really strong and brave in every way, yet this was not my greatest disappointment. No, I ponder far more over Peter than Daddy. I know very well that I conquered him. Instead of he conquering me, I created an image of him in my mind, pictured him as a quiet, sensitive, lovable boy who needed affection and friendship. I needed a living person to whom I could pour out my heart. I wanted a friend who'd help to put me on the right road. I achieved what I wanted. Slowly but surely I drew him towards me. Finally, when I had made him feel friendly, it automatically developed into an intimacy which on second thought I don't think I ought to have allowed. We talked about the most private things, and yet up till now we have never touched on those things that filled and still fill my heart and soul. I still don't know quite what to make of Peter. Is he superficial, or does he still feel shy, even of me? But dropping that, I committed one error in my desire to make a real friendship. I switched over and tried to get at him by developing it into a more intimate relation, whereas I should have explored all other possibilities. He longs to be loved, and I could see that he's beginning to be more and more in love with me. He gets satisfaction out of our meetings, whereas they just have the effect of making me want to try it out with him again. And yet I don't seem able to touch on the subjects that I'm so longing to bring out into the daylight. I drew Peter towards me far more than he realizes. Now he clings to me, and for the time being I don't see any way of shaking him off and putting him on his own feet. When I realized he could not be a friend for my understanding, I thought I would at least try to lift him up out of his narrow-mindedness and make him do something with his youth. For me, for in its innermost depths, youth is lonelier than old age. I read this saying in some book, and I've always remembered it and found it to be true. Is it true, then, that grown-ups have a more difficult time here than we do? No. I know it isn't. Older people have formed their opinions about everything and don't waver before they act. It's twice as hard for us young ones to hold our ground and maintain our opinions in a time when all ideals are being shattered and destroyed, when people are showing their worst side and do not know whether to believe in truth and right and God. Anyone who claims that the older ones have a more difficult time here certainly doesn't realize to what extent our problems weigh down on us. Problems for which we are probably much too young, but which thrust themselves upon us continually until after a long time we think we found a solution, but the solution doesn't seem able to resist the facts which reduce it to nothing again. That's the difficulty in these times. Ideals, dreams, and cherished hopes rise within us only to meet the horrible truth and be shattered. It's really a wonder that I haven't dropped all my ideals because they seem so absurd and impossible to carry out. Yet I keep them because in spite of everything, I still believe that people are really good at heart. I simply can't build up my hopes on a foundation consisting of confusion, misery, and death. I see the world gradually being turned into a wilderness. I hear the ever-approaching thunder, which will destroy us too. I can feel the sufferings of millions, and yet, if I look up into the heavens, I think that it will all come right, that this cruelty too will end, and that peace and tranquility will return again. In the meantime, I must uphold my ideals, for perhaps the time will come when I shall be able to carry them out. Yours and Frank.